Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, and welcome to the closing plenary of the 2025 Land and Youth Digital Conference. My name is Betty.A, and it's been a true privilege to journey with you from the opening plenary to this moment. Before we begin, whilst we are still waiting for our colleagues to join us, let's just take note of this quick housekeeping note. First, please know that this session is being recorded. And second, if you'd like to ask a question, you can use the question and answers function or the chat. We'll come to them later in the conversation, and interpretation is available in French, Spanish, and Portuguese. You'll find the option at the bottom of your screen. And fourth, this is a safe space. Please feel free. And everyone, ensure that you uphold integrity, respect each other's when we are commenting, and let's also actively listen to whatever conversation is going on. And finally, we would have additional instructions and resources shared in the chat as we go along during this conference. So please keep an eye on the chat box. Would love to know where you are joining us from in the room, so please take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat. Share your name, your organization, and then where you are joining us from. I'm Betty. I am representing the Green Africa Youth Organization, and then I'm joining from Accra, Ghana. Please let those introductions flow in the chat. 2 days ago, we opened with stories of identity, stories of dignity and belonging. We were reminded that land is never just about the property, it's about memory, it's about culture and the future. Today, as we close, we return to those reflections with one question in mind. How do we carry these voices forward, these discussions forward to action towards COP30 and even beyond? As promised, let me tell you a story. At the age of 22, I began working as a project coordinator in Accra, Ghana. And one of my first tasks was to partner with the municipal assembly, the local assembly in Ghana, to secure a land for a project that would create jobs and improve waste management in the community. I still remember walking into the assembly, sitting down at the director's office and explaining the important project. Following all what I said, he looked at me and he said, "You are 22 years. You are a female. What can you do?" Those words cut deeply. They did. But instead of me being remorseful about it or it stopping me, it rather fueled me and my team. Together, we proved ourselves. The project not only succeeded, it became one of the best models of waste management in Ghana. And it recently won the Earthshot Prize. And the assembly itself testified that our work has reduced their community waste management costs and even helped them win recognition as the best assembly in sanitation. This experience taught me that while age and gender stereotypes may create barriers or even perseverance, I feel like perseverance and evidence of impact can break them down and create lasting change. In many ways, this is exactly what this session or this closing session should be about. Inspiration, gathering the wisdom we have shared, confronting the barriers we face, and co-creating and reflecting together a pathway forward. One phrase that really stayed with me came from the session on Indigenous and Afro-descendant youth using digital media to preserve nature. And they said, "Use it or lose it, pharmacy of the future." Wow. This is just one of the many insights we've gathered or we've heard during this conference. And now would love to hear from you, our participants, what resonated most with you over these days. Please share in the chats, and we'll do well to bring in those voices as the conference unfolds. Let's hear from you what resonated with you. Now, to hear more on reflection, allow me to introduce two incredible individuals today who would walk us through the key highlights and takeaways from 8 sessions over the last 3 days. To begin with, Luis Beccaro is a data management consultant at the Land Portal and a PhD researcher in development studies at Bonn University. He has expertise in data-driven land governance and humanitarian assessments and community-based conflict resolution. And secondly, Diana Kiyalo is a land information and data specialist with over 5 years experience supporting marginalized communities in securing land rights. And she currently works as the data curator consultant with the Land Portal, building on previous roles with Kenya's Land Institution and UN Habitat. Diana will summarize session 1 to 4, while Louise highlights sessions 5 to 8. As you listen, please, I invite you to think about what has resonated with you most and put those comments in the chat. Over to you, Diana. Mm. Thank you. Thank you very much, Diana. Now let me just quickly pass it on to Louis. Louis, over to you. Wow, thank you so much, Lewis and Diana, for that insightful reflection. Indeed, alliance is very important. I just love the quotes that Diana also mentioned. I feel like just going back to rewatch all those videos. I love one particular comment in the chat from Lisa that says, throughout many sessions, I have noticed that despite the involvement of many different countries and cultures, certain challenges are common, such as the effects of climate change, gender inequality, and limited or no access to decision making for young people. It was very intriguing to notice these similarities all over the world and hear proposed solutions and actions. Indeed, it was very important. Now we've had the reflection. Let's look ahead. And to help us look ahead, I have five distinguished panel members with us today. Together, with five of us, we're going to reflect on how the messages from this conference can connect to ongoing struggles and what actions are needed as we move towards COP30 and beyond. Please still keep the chats engaging. Let us know your reflections. We'll do well to read them out as well for the audience. Now, let me introduce my panel members. With me today, I have Nesadelia Ramirez. She is a young leader from Mexico, coordinating the youth movement of the Mesoamerican Alliance of Peoples and Forests, and the first woman to serve as a secretary of the Ejeda Commissariat in her community, where she champions youth and women participation in forest governance. The second person with us today is Atif Javed, based in India. He is a climate and sustainability advocate working across the Middle East and Asia Pacific, focusing on food systems, agriculture, climate finance, and technology. He also represents youth voices globally through Yongo and UNCCD Youth Constituency. Again, we have Mike Azonsop from Cameroon, who is a researcher and advocate with Ecosystem Development, focusing on land rights, indigenous knowledge, and climate justice, particularly with the Bazang people, and he works to amplify youth and indigenous voices in global land and climate decisions. Very interesting biographies. We also have Shimron Kipto, who is a development studies practitioner and indigenous people's rights advocate with the Chepkitale Indigenous People Development Project, where he supports community development, land rights, and youth empowerment. And the last person, not the least on our panel, is Mega Seth. It's a development communication professional working to amplify the voices of young women, pastoralists, indigenous youth, and smallholder farmers with a focus on land rights, gender justice, and climate resilience. Audience, wow, what a diverse group we have today. In the chats, just welcome them. Let's just welcome them. To begin with, now let's start with Nasedelia. As we look ahead, COP30 in Belgium will be a defining moment for centering indigenous voices, protecting forests, and ensuring that local actions shape global commitments. Your work with community Nasedelia on forest and youth leadership directly connects to these themes. How do you think key messages from this conference relate to your agenda and priorities as we approach COP30? Over to you. Nasedelia, if you're talking, you're muted. Great.
Do you
Yes.
hear me? Hello, nice to meet you here in Mexico at 7 a.m. My name is Nancy Dalia Ramirez Dominguez, and I am from the Tocal community called Cordon Grande in the southeast of Mexico. And currently, I am leading the movement called the youth movement in the Mesoamerican Alliance of Peoples and Forests, and as well I am doing that as well for the GTC, the Global Alliance of Territorial Communities. And answering the question, I think it's important to mention that our alliance is a coalition of indigenous peoples and local communities from different areas of the world, and it comprises people from Indonesia, the Congo Basin, the Amazon Basin, Brazil, and Mesoamerica. That is why it's so important to mention that even though there is a huge cultural diversity, there are many similarities among many communities, whether they are indigenous peoples or local communities. That means that we have created claims, demands that are similar. It's common struggles. For example, the land defense issue. One that is one of our key demands, the right to land, direct funding, defending traditional knowledge, and free, prior, and informed consent. And we think that all of these demands align very well with COP30. As our leaders say, COP30 must be the COP that will bring life, that will be the COP for forests, the COP in which we will regain hope, because the last few COPs for us um, have been a bit they have been unmotivating because they have been COPs in which between countries they've been creating businesses and so forth, but they are not ensuring the community rights. Even when we talk about nature based solutions, as an alliance, as youth, we do demand for nature based solutions, but we have to do it with the communities because if not, there won't be protection, neither conservation. And as youth members, we are abiding by that role as continuing with our leaders, defending, working with our leaders to defend our demands. And one of our demands is the protection to life as well, the protection of environmental defenders. And considering this, I think it's important that at the scope we can position this very well. As the Global Alliance youth member, we have three axes with three themes. And one of them is access to direct funding, which means that we don't think that the funding is the end, it's a medium to keep up the strengthening of the initiatives that are already undergoing on the ground, projects that the youth are doing in different territories and regions. Also, traditional knowledge. We're working a lot in protecting the ancestral knowledge that we have. We are creating workshops, trainings with our elderly so they can transmit this knowledge to younger generations and they can keep and this knowledge can be protected and be kept alive for future generations. And of course, another line of work that we're focusing on is the protection of life, that we can ensure that global decisions can support that defense of environmental defenders. We know that in the Mesoamerican region, for example, there are high rates of attacks to environmental defenders, and many of them are from indigenous peoples communities. In Mexico, a few years ago, was the first place of having these attacks, and now it's among the first three. It's still unmotivating, and there's no justice in many cases that have happened in the last few years, and that's why as a youth group, we are raising our voices, and I think one of our colleagues here said many times, if we are an activist or if we are an advocate, for many people it's an option, and they decide to do it. I don't think we don't consider ourselves advocates in that way. We are environmental defenders because since we are littles, we don't have an option. We don't have an option to do because we are already there in the territory. We're defending because we have to. We are being attacked. We're being threatened. So for us, it's not an option to become an environmental defender. It's a right and it's an obligation that we must do. since we are little, since we were born. That is why we do not fit into that concept of being an advocate or an activist. And I think it does make a lot of sense when we say there's a huge difference between what happens on the ground and what happens in the cities. Because on the ground, in the communities, we become invisible sometimes and we are always being attacked. And this is what it is that we think that COP30, we try to showcase those threats that we are facing because we cannot be talking about sustainability uh, without defending the territory, without defending the people whose lives are at risk, and also to boost youth participation in the decision making,
Hmm.
not just saying, not just listening in the decision making processes, but to be key actors to provide some solutions. We do need to come from discourses to actual commitments in which their youth opinions are taken care into account, are taken into account, and not just used in an agenda. And taking the words from my sister, my friend Sarah Omi, we're not an agenda. We are subject to right, and that's why we need to be in those decision making spaces. Thank you. That
Wow.
will be all.
Wow, thank you. Very interesting. This cup should bring life. It should bring fruits. And young people, we are the key. Now, talking about young people, let's move to Mega. Following your engagement in the regional and global youth platforms, including the International Land Coalition of Young Leaders Fellowship, how do the key messages from this conference relate to your agenda as well and priorities for COP30?
Thank you, Betty. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. And it's been honor to be here. And I think over the past 2 days, we are hearing many powerful stories and also bold demands and concrete examples on how land justice is essential. And yes, I think these are the platforms, like you mentioned, the Land Coalition, International Land Coalition, or we can say Land Portal, or Mijark, or any other youth movement that provides a global platform for youth to raise their voices, to raise their concerns, to raise their lived experiences per se, and in solidarity from the young women, from the young indigenous women, from the young pastoralist herder. We all come together and exchange our ideas and learn from each other, explore the challenges, and as well as we as a youth not only talk about challenges because we are the torch bearer of our community, we are the guardians of our ancestral knowledge. So we don't see only on the challenges, but with the new narratives, with the new technological advancement, we do propose these solutions as well. But again, I think there are so many challenges who we need to address any time. And through this International Land Coalition, or currently I'm at the Nalini Forum taking place in Sri Lanka. And here we are also talking about how youth, and I think three major uh, concepts or three major core themes that are emerging from all these global platforms is, and first of them is secure land tenure as a climate actions. And I must say that these three themes should be voices at the COP30. And again, the first is securing land tenure as a climate action. And this is the one strong message here that securing land rights is not an optional. They are essential for climate actions. And being a youth, I think securing land tenureship is a key pillar for availing the climate actions. And I think at COP30, the priority is very clear. Climate mitigation and adaptation policies must recognize land tenure security as the one of the key theme. And for youth being underprivileged or under valued, belong to any of the group, I think this must be the land tenureship must be translated in the legal recognition with inheritance of land, inheritance of natural resources, and through the protection and such mechanism or prevent mechanism or protection mechanism should be there. The second theme that is again emerging is the lack of decision spaces and the lack of free and prior informed consent from the youth voices. And I think this is very again the issue that needs to be raised as a COP at a COP 30, and this is the priority again. Um, because if we do it, we make the youth in a decision-making places, or we consider youth voices before any carbon trading or renewable energy or any such projects took place. Their consent will minimize the risk of that project, and that also with the local contribution, with the technical advancement of youth and with the free prior consent from the community and youth, all these projects is going to be a sustainable projects, and that will also enhance the local environment. And also the third priority and third demand from all the global youth is again the youth responsive climate finances, I think. Climate finance must be youth centric and engendered with young boys and girls, not just as a beneficiaries, but as the central actors. Our agenda at International Land Coalition Youth emphasize that climate funds, carbon credit schemes, and renewable energy investment must reach to those dependent on lands and other natural resources. So yes, I think these three are the main priorities and emerging themes that we, as a International Land Coalition and other Nalini Global Forum that I
Mm.
represent as a youth, we want to highlight at the COP 30.
Wow. Interesting. Thank you
Thank you
so
so much.
much. Thank you so much for that insightful feedback from your end. Indeed, young people are the torch bearers. And allow me to read one comment from the chat from Marvin that says, youth must pursue civic mindedness and be open to use their voice in any available platform to push for governance reform pertaining to land rights. The apathy that prevails in our modern society will only prolong injustice and deterioration of social values of what is right and wrong. Values formation can instill a firm conviction of making a stand for truth and freedom. Wow. One thing I picked from this is governance. And this brings me to the next panel member I want to invite, who is Atif. We've heard a lot about how young people are, the issues young people are facing. And this conversation directly connects to global policy processes, talking about the UN conventions to national climate plans, where young constituencies are pushing to be heard. Atif, given your work with CSOs, Yongo, and UNCCD Youth Constituency, how do you, or should I say, how do the key takeaways from this conference align with priorities or policy priorities in these spaces? And looking at national plans, what's really in it for the young people? Atif, over to you. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for that. I think that story was really powerful. to just bring your session to a close. You even trying to respond to another question in the chat that spoke about what are we doing, what are young people doing in their own community to solve issues of land access. And now let me take this to Shimran here with us today. Beyond policies, beyond declaration that Atif just mentioned, conferences like this also leave us with personal reflections that shape how we act when we return home, right? Shemron, as someone deeply engaged in community development and youth empowerment, what is your personal takeaway from this conference and why? And looking ahead, what opportunities for actions do you see? Over to you, Shimron.
Yeah, thank you very much, Betty, and greetings to you all from wherever you're joining us from. I think before maybe I start is just to mention a few before, just to mention that aside from the very beautiful biography that you just read, I would want to mention that I'm also part of the Youth on Land Multi-Stakeholder Platform in Africa, which of course a partner in this conference, the ILA, is a host to it. And of course, also talking about COP30, I have the privilege of representing the indigenous youth in the Indigenous Peoples Commission, representing the international indigenous youth on climate change. As we continue with this, we are championing for governance, access to land, and all this. As we all in this, as we are all in this, we need to be party to that. Any man who sells their land sells the future of their own children. Land is so sacred to us, and we don't own land. Our land owns us. I think if we get that fact right, then I think all other things would follow. From it we came, and to it we shall return. So attending this conference has really felt to me as I would put it in two aspects. One, a mirror, and the second one is a map. Yeah, it's very weird how that would be. But then, as a mirror, I saw the struggles and the values of my community, be it land as identity, and the need for communal protection, the land tenure protection for us, the centrality of youth in land, which are not isolated. We as the young leaders from various regions, joining in from Asia, from Africa, spoke in the same language. That land is cultural memory, livelihood, and a site for climate resilience, just as alluded from yesterday's session. The recognition matters. It validates the idea I carry home, our local stories, and the powerful evidences that we have shared in the global in this conversation can be taken to the global stages. The aspect that I would want to talk about is on the map. This conference has offered very concrete pathways. We have just witnessed the digital tools that have been employed and deployed by the youth in this conference, the networks that we have shared, and the advocacy windows that have been provided for us here to help us translate, and of course to translate our stories, experiences, not just to leave it at this point, but of course to push it to an influence, to make it influential. What mostly struck me was the emphasis of what the youth have produced, the evidences that they have produced, the straightforward sessions that they have shared, which were of course facilitated by my fellow young people. That brought a lot of joy and energy to me. I think for me, this conference has really been important as I come to a close. It has reminded me that returning home is not the end. It is where the most important things and work begins. Capacity building, turning principles into bylaws, and of course, turning networks into resourcefulness.
Wow.
You know, yeah,
Thank you.
and just going into the opportunities that lie ahead of us as we get into the global and the regional advocacy areas. We have COP30 that is coming ahead, and we have other regional opportunities that can be explored. And of course, going back to the community, whatever that we have, the opportunities that we have had in these sessions, we can take it to the community level for action and localize them to the benefit of those whom we serve. I think I would leave it at that. Thank you very much, Betty. Back
Thank
to
you
you.
so much, Shimran. That was indeed very insightful. And thank you for highlighting technology. And I loved your quote, says we don't own land, our land own us. Now, this takes us to Mike. We've also heard how Indigenous knowledge and community voices are vital for shaping culture and climate and land justice. Mike, drawing from your work with the Bedzang people and your advocacy for youth and Indigenous rights, what is your personal takeaway from this conference and why? And what opportunities for action do you see as we move forward? Mm. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Mm. Can you wrap up for us, Mike? Yeah. Wow, thank you so much for that brilliant submission. I think that's very important, and your stories are really to heart. I love the chats that are coming in. I just want to read out one or two of those. One from Patricia says, I do hope that we all understand how the social movements in Brazil are working together, building alliances among the different identities, but also generations. Belgium will be our space to push forward a change in the way we think and work across movements. and at different levels, but focusing on the central role of women at all levels and identities. And Felicia also says, it is rather a comment, but she says, very timely topic and impactful too. However, all youth need to be aware of this program, even at the rural level, not just some sessions of youth in African countries. And this is what Mike said, which really, really resonate. Now, allow me to bring in Diana and Louise to respond to these two questions in the chat. The first question says, how can we encourage young people not to abandon their land and instead cultivate them and seek better ways to make the land productive, which is economical enough to make a living, provided that local governments are supporting the youth to stay in the countryside for development? Diana, do you mind responding to this question? Okay. So, how do we encourage youth not to abandon their land and instead cultivate them and seek better ways to make them productive? Wow, thank you very much for that. And now, before I go to Louis, allow me to bring in Nancedelia. There's a question in the chat that says, what concrete projects or initiatives are you implementing in your community to advance youth access to land? Do you want to respond to this for us, Nancedelia? Nancedelia, if you're talking, you're muted.
Thank you very much. Yes, there are many activities or initiatives that we are developing in the territories. Of course, talking about the Global Alliance that goes from Indonesia to Mesoamerica. There are many initiatives and many topics. First of all, there's one related to biodiversity conservation. There are many projects actually in the case that youth are participating in the monitoring of wildlife. In Mexico, for example, there is a species that lives in our territories that is in danger. This is a jaguar. And for the last 15 years, we have been developing a project to monitor this species and to identify where they usually are located and to find alternatives or mechanisms that could protect them or still protecting this species. We learn how to live together with this specific animal that are so important for the Mother Earth and nature, and we work in projects related to that. And at the same time, those projects are aligned to technology, using technological tools to try to do that monitoring. And it's right there where the youth is participating, working in food sovereignty, for example. Yesterday we have Nidia, who is from a women organization. She's young and she works specifically in food sovereignty, in rescuing the seeds, protecting them protecting the traditional and ancestral knowledge from our elderly. And we also use technology to protect the territory facing many threats. For example, in Guatemala, in ACOFOP, which is one of our organizations, partner organizations, they use drones to monitor and oversee wildfires. Through this technology, it is way more effective and reduces the wildfire high rates in the region, especially because it's within the Maya reservoir area. And this technology also helps us to protect the territory from invasion. This is happening in many areas, especially in areas where there is no good or land tenure safety. And there are many encroachments that are related to logging, illegal logging, and these tools help us to oversee the territory. There are many communities created on the ground that each of them are committed to protect the territory. And within those groups, we have the women, and we have youth participating as well. We also use technology to create communication networks, indigenous and community communication networks. Because within organizations, there are networks to communicate and to disseminate the role that communities have in protecting Mother Earth and to make threats visible. In many cases, these communication networks have helped us to protect ourselves, to protect our own lives, because unfortunately, for example, in Mexico, there is a saying that says, if we don't know, then it doesn't happen, which means that if the people don't know through the if the people don't know what's happening in the territories, then it means that nothing is actually happening, that everything is okay. So that's why it's so important to make people aware, make the communities aware what is happening so we can protect us in one way or another. And then another activity that we are working a lot on is in education within the indigenous worldviews and traditional knowledge from IPs. In Indonesia, for example, there is a project called Come Back Home, in which the young community members are coming back to um, they're coming back from the cities where they went to look for new opportunities, and they lost a little bit their identity, and now they're coming back to teach kids their culture and for the kids not to go through what they had to go through, and we can protect their native tongue, and developing a few initiatives and projects and so forth. There is a school in Mesoamerica called the Mesoamerican Leadership School, in which youth are developing, are working on technical skills and leadership and identity skills. And basically, this is a school that aims to
Okay.
protect our knowledge.
Very interesting. Thank you so much for those really insightful, practical examples. Indeed, if we don't know, then it doesn't happen. I believe that's what relates to what the land portal is doing. Now, allow me to bring in Louis, just in a very short sentence. Can you let us know how and your work with respect to what you're doing, the land portal, creates access to land for young people? Louis. Louis, if you're talking, you're muted. Okay, so the question is, with respect to the work you do with the land portal, how have you enabled access to land for young people? Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Wow. Thank you so much for that, Louis. If we do not know, then it doesn't happen. We've just reflected. I know the questions still keep on pouring. The panelists, please do well to respond to the questions in the chat. And if you have any further thoughts, please comment them in the chat. We have to wrap the session. It's very engaging, but we have to bring it to a close. As we have reflected, it's also very important that we look ahead. We forge ahead. And for that matter, allow me to invite Romisato to share with us the next steps from this conference and the way forward. Romisato is a research and knowledge lead at the Land Portal Foundation with 2 decades of experience in land governance, open data, and community forest management across South America, Asia, and Europe. Romy, over to you. Thank you so much, Romy. Audience, please don't leave yet. We are not done. We'd like to invite Child Tommy to just give us a closing remarks before we bring the conference to a wrap. Charles. Wow, thank you so much. Demand more from us and demand more from yourself. And this brings us to the end of the closing plenary. Friends, this conference has shown us that youth are not only the future, but the present drivers of change in land and climate governance. Together, we've lifted stories from indigenous communities. You've heard my personal stories, you've heard the stories of other people here, from rural innovators, land defenders, and youth leaders worldwide. On behalf of the Land Portal and all the partners, Youth Initiative for Land in Africa, Global Alliance of Territorial Communities, Espesofe Meneza, the Invisible Thread, Asian NGO Coalition of Agrarian Reform and Rural Development, Connection La, and Witness Radio. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for participating. Thank you to the speakers, the participants who raised your voices. As we close, let's remember that this conference has been about a lot. It has been about inspiring ourselves. It has been about sharing knowledge and experiences. It has been about translating them into action. It has been about representation. It has been about a lot. It has also been about connection, resources, networking, and the list goes on. Don't forget to visit the Land Portal conference page at landportal.org to access more information and follow them on their social media pages. It's Land Portal. You can access a lot of information and more on the conference and beyond. My name is Betty.A, and it has been an honor to serve as your moderator today. With that, I officially close the 2025 Land and Youth Digital Conference. Thank you. Dankeschön.
Thank you.
everyone.